Hey, what's up guys? Joker here. Hope you're all doing well. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a different video as I'm going to be reviewing the new Sopranos movie prequel called The Many Saints of Newark. Now, I'm doing this for a couple reasons. Number one, I'm a huge Sopranos fan and I know a lot about the show. Honestly, I've watched it through at least 4 times that I can recall, like from start to finish, and that includes when it initially came out back in the late 90s. I may have even watched it 5 or 6 times, honestly, but I can remember 4 times for sure that I've watched it from start to finish, so pretty well up to date on all the lore of The Sopranos and the references and stuff that were made throughout the prequel film. And second of all, I feel like I had to do this video because I found this movie to be just really, really disappointing, and it just did not live up to my expectations, which were not like exorbitant. I didn't expect this to be like the next Irishman. I was not expecting an 11 out of 10 movie. I really, really wasn't. I was expecting a solid gangster film with, lots of references to The Sopranos, and maybe we would actually learn something new about all of these characters. And this video is going to be chock full of spoilers, so this is your warning right now ahead of time. We're going to be talking about everything in this movie, at least certain topics of the movie that I wanted to talk about, which include heavy, heavy spoilers. So this is your warning now. After the ad break, we are jumping right into it with the spoiler review and discussion of The Many Saints of Newark. But first, today's video is brought to you by SuperCDK.com, where you can save money on games for all of your favorite platforms, as well as software like Windows 10 Pro for just $19.50, and then you can unlock the prestigious dark mode on Windows 10 and take advantage of that. I couldn't live without it. And if you shoot over there right now, you could save 25% off. Hit the buy now button and then put in my code JP25 at checkout. I'll walk you guys through the process right now so you can see how much money we're saving and how to go ahead and install this on your Windows 10 PC. That brings our price down to $14.62, total of savings of almost $5 using that JP25 code, which will work for any software products over there. Once you're done with that, go ahead and click on Submit Order and select your payment mode of choice, which me personally is PayPal, and then I'll go ahead and complete the checkout by clicking on Pay Now. After completing the checkout, it'll bring you to your purchased order page, and it will update in a matter of seconds, or just go ahead and hit F5. Go ahead and do that one time. It came through literally immediately. I got the payment email that it had gone through and the delivery of the product exactly at the same time. Once you're done with that, go ahead and click on View Keys and Codes, and we'll get our code right here that we can go ahead and copy and paste in on Windows 10 by hitting the Start button and type in the word Activate. When you see that activation settings or see if Windows is activated, go ahead and click on that, and it'll bring up this right here, and click on change your product key or unlock Windows 10. As I already have Windows 10, I obviously don't need to put in a new key, but just paste it in and then go ahead and click next, and you are all done and set. For more information on SuperCDK.com as well as the coupon code, be sure to check out the links down in the description below. So first up, I'll start off with probably like one of the most disappointing things in the movie. There's quite a few things that were kind of disappointing or annoying or just didn't live up to, what I was hoping to see in the movie. But the first one is there was not enough Tony in this movie at all. And the role of Tony, the teenage Tony, played by James Gandolfini's son, Michael Gandolfini, which was shown primarily throughout the trailers leading up to this film's release, he doesn't show up until 51 minutes into the film. We do get to see young Tony a couple of times. This is the actor that played the younger version of Tony. This was actually a pretty good callback to a episode in the show where there was, it was sort of like a flashback episode where it showed Tony when he was young interacting with his father, Johnny Soprano, and he actually sneaks off in the back of the car because he takes young Janice to a carnival so that he can go there and play cards, and he lets her go on the rides, but he never takes Tony to it. So Tony sneaks into the back of the vehicle to go see what's happening, and then afterwards, the father ends up getting arrested, and the kids end up brought home by the police. So that was a pretty good callback, pretty good reference to something that actually happened in the show, and then ended up leading to Johnny Soprano going to prison for 2 to 5 years. But then we don't get to see Tony really, like I said, a whole lot throughout the movie. He has some pretty decent scenes here or there, and the actor Michael Gandolfini, who plays the teenage Tony Soprano, actually does a fantastic job. He was one of the best actors and parts in this movie, and really kind of nailed the mannerisms of Tony Soprano and stuff like that, which is obviously Tony Soprano was a character and was nothing like the real life actor James Gandolfini. He didn't talk like that, sound like that, or act like that really in any way whatsoever. He's full on just nailing the character of Tony Soprano, the posture, the way he sits, the way he eats, just everything about him, the way he moves and talks and everything. I think he really pretty much nailed Tony Soprano as a teenager, and I would have loved to have seen more of him. And that's one of the biggest things about it that was disappointing, is that we didn't get to see more of Tony's story kind of get fleshed out. And I would, in fact, say that my favorite scene of the entire movie, it did include Michael Gandolfini, where he is having an interaction with Olivia Soprano, played by Vera Farmiga, where she finds out that he actually had told a really nice story about a memory that he had with her. So she's trying to actually be nice and connect with her son and show him a loving side of her. But eventually, after just a minute or two, she turns into that old Olivia Soprano that we know, that's just a complete and utter cunt, and just turns it on into oh, go on. What are you talking about? That whole thing. You're talking out your hat. The old Olivia Soprano that you probably remember from the first 2 seasons of the show before the actress that played her passed away. But this scene right here, where she makes him the cheeseburger and tries to connect with him, I thought was the strongest performance between 2 actors in a single scene in this movie, because both of them nailed their characters probably more than any other actors in this film. Michael Gandolfini nailed Tony Soprano, and Vera Farmiga nailed Olivia Soprano. They were absolutely perfect in those roles, and I just wanted to see a lot more of that. The way that the movie kind of ends is this scene. This is almost at the end, basically, where we get to see this scene where Tony is from behind with this like Joker-like reference. There's a couple of references in this movie sort of to the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix from a few years ago, which just seemed kind of forced and lazy, and I feel like they were kind of undeniable. This was one of them right here, with this shot of him sort of leaning with his head kind of cocked to the side. It's a shot we've seen of the Joker before in The Dark Knight, as well as in the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie. And there was another shot like this earlier on in the movie with young Tony as well, with the shot from the back, kind of reminding me again of like that Dark Knight or Joaquin Phoenix Joker film. Even in this shot, I would say even more so in a way, because it has the school buses, which were obviously a huge point in the Dark Knight films, with Joker on the school bus during the bank robbery and later after he blows up the hospital and all that stuff. So yeah, I feel like it was chock full of some Joker references, trying to create some sort of like subconscious comparison between Tony Soprano and the psychotic Joker character from the Batman movies, which I don't really feel like is an entirely fair comparison. I mean, I guess you can make the argument that Tony is very likely a sociopath, he's a killer, but he's not a complete psycho like the Joker. So I don't really feel like it's a completely fair comparison, if that's really what the directors was kind of going for here with this shot. And then also the city is just a big reference sort of to the Joker as well, although honestly unintentional probably in some ways. But the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix was mostly filmed actually in the city of Newark, where this movie takes place. But they reuse some of the like actual locations, like you'll recognize from the movie, like this scene right here, where they start to have the race riots in the city of Newark outside the theater. That was, this street is used heavily in this movie actually, and heavily also in the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie from a few years ago. So yeah, I feel like there was definitely a lot of sort of comparisons that you can kind of draw there between the Joker film and this, which again, I just didn't really feel like it was very necessary, and it just seemed a little bit forced to me. Now, on the point of like the plot of the film, which doesn't really feel that strong, I like I said, I really wish this was more focused on Tony, because we don't really get to see his full-on rise to sort of become a made man. The way this movie sort of ends, I feel like this could have been a great 2-hour first episode into like a miniseries, like a 6-part miniseries or something. If that's what this was, if this was the first part of a miniseries, I would have been singing its praises, like, okay, this is a really great start, and I can't wait to see where they go with the character of Tony. But we never really see him get there. We get to kind of see we do get to see a point where he sort of decides like, okay, I'm going into this life, but that's really about it. If you remember from back in the series, there was a whole big story about how Tony sort of got noticed, by the higher ups in the family and all that, which was by holding a robbery on like old school gangster Feech LaManna, and they get caught for it. But then a lot of people stand up for them, and they ended up actually kind of getting away with it, even though they pulled off this robbery of a gangster's card game and stuff, who's a character that was in the series heavily, and that's really kind of how Tony. At least the story in the series, that's sort of how he made his bones and became a gangster. And I really wish we would have at least gotten through that point. And I feel like that would have been a much better storyline to follow versus Dicky Moltisanti having a war with a rival black gang in the city of Newark, which just really wasn't very interesting. The characters in that weren't very interesting. I thought Dicky Moltisanti was okay, and I do like the idea of seeing a story about him sort of fleshed out. But I feel like this movie was much more sold as a Tony Soprano origin story, and it never really gets there, honestly. It has like little bits and pieces sort of, spread throughout it, but it never really fully develops, and then the movie just ends sort of abruptly, and the plot of it with the whole storyline with the, the race riots and everything like that was just, it wasn't really for me. And the reason I say that is just because this type of topic, I'm all for, equal rights and all that stuff, but I feel like this topic gets shoehorned into so many movies and TV shows in the past few years. Like, you can't watch a movie or a TV show where we're not seeing the cops beating up a young African-American male. It happens in this movie very early on. It's the thing that pretty much lights the fire on the race riots and the whole focus kind of the movie and sort of what's going on. And like, I was hoping for a good Sopranos story and seeing stuff about the Sopranos, not worrying about race riots and police brutality and trying to go full woke. And this movie totally does it. They sadly go full woke, which is to this point, it's become so overdone that it's become almost like a cringy, archetype. What's that trope? It's basically a trope is the word I was looking for. It's become this sort of cringy trope that gets forced into a lot of movies and TV shows right now. And we've seen movies and shows dedicated to whole topics about this, and that's fine if that's what you want to do, but I didn't really feel like The Sopranos was the place for it. It almost felt like it was an apologetic reference because of when the show came out back in the late 90s and early 2000s, there really wasn't this whole woke culture going on and everything. So, yeah, like, there was a lot of racism and stuff in that show that, just kind of gets passed over, because even at the time, just less than 20 years ago, it was fairly normal, especially in the Northeast and like the New York, New Jersey area where I grew up, where you would hear a lot of older people say some pretty messed up things. So I feel like this was almost like an apology for that, because they did get a lot of shit for it in years after the show came out. And then the last thing I'll bring up, and I left this for the end because it really is the biggest spoiler of the movie, but it's really the only thing in the plot that I felt like sort of introduced any sort of new information to what we saw in the series at all, and that is the death of Dicky Moltisanti and who is essentially responsible for his death. So we have this scene right here where Dicky Moltisanti gets whacked, and you can see the man that is shooting him. This is really the best glimpse we get of him, and you can see that it does appear to be a white man. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because throughout the movie, especially leading up to this point, things are starting to get pretty hot and heavy with his war with Howard and the Black Saints, the rival black gang that they're kind of going head to head with. So it really would have made a lot of sense if they had tried to take him out at this point in time. But it doesn't look that way, because we actually get to see a white shooter, which sort of lines up with what we saw in the series, where Tony reveals to Chris that a off-duty police officer who used to do hits for the mob actually kills Dicky Moltisanti, which, we're kind of left to, do we really believe Tony here? Is he just misleading Chris and forcing him to do another one of his biddings, and just telling him it was the guy that killed his father? Because the officer, from what I remember in the scene in the show, he, denies it vehemently. But, of course, anyone's going to deny something that's going to get them killed when they got a gun to their head. But so even though we don't get to see who the exact shooter is, this does lend a little bit of credence to that, as we know it wasn't a member of the Black Saints that did it. And sure, it could have been the Black Saints that hired him, but it wasn't. So this is really the only new bit of information I felt like we learned from this film. And that hit was set in motion by none other than Junior Soprano. So this was really the only big reveal of this movie that, and it was a kind of a cool thing to learn, that Junior was kind of behind all of this, because obviously he has a little bit of a track record of trying to take out family members. He tried to have his own nephew Tony whacked himself in partnership with Olivia Soprano in the first season of the show. So to see that he actually set the wheels in motion that ended up getting Dicky Moltisanti whacked, the father of Chris Moltisanti, is pretty nuts. And now I would kind of like to go back and watch the show again just to sort of see those interactions between Junior and Chris to see if there's anything sort of there. But I do remember there's some stuff where he mentions he didn't really think he had the makings of a of a made guy or something like that. And speaking of the makings of, they do have that line. He never had the makings of a varsity athlete, talking about Tony when they're sitting down at dinner, and that was a big argument that they had in the show, if you remember. So that was a cool reference in this. But yeah, Junior basically ends up being the one that sets this in motion, and I'm looking for the thing that I referenced here. So yeah, the reason he sets the whole killing in motion is because leaving the funeral for one of the characters that was actually played by Joey Coco Diaz, one of my favorite comedians. After leaving the funeral, he slips and falls on the stairs, and then Dicky basically laughs in his face because he found it to be kind of funny, and then Junior ends up having him whacked just because he laughed at him after he fell, which was really kind of a stupid reason to have someone whacked. And towards the end at the funeral, you kind of get the feeling that maybe Junior had some regrets about actually putting that hit into motion. Seemed like he was like, maybe I shouldn't have gone that far with it. A couple other things I'll point out as just quick references in the movie that I thought were kind of cool was the inclusion of real-life gangster Frank Lucas, shown right here wearing his chinchilla coat. If you remember, this was the character and real-life person that was played by Denzel Washington in the movie American Gangster. And now there's actually a prequel series to the American Gangster film called The Godfather of Harlem, where Forrest Whitaker plays Bumpy Johnson, which is a very, very good show. It's on the Epix network, and I definitely recommend checking it out. It's had 2 whole seasons now. It's worth getting a 1-month subscription to Epix just to binge watch The Godfather of Harlem. Cannot recommend it enough. And also in this scene, if you notice this jacket, I wasn't 100% sure if it was... I'm pretty sure it was intended, but I don't think it's the actual jacket. But if you remember in the show, the jacket from Richie Aprile that he took off, I think it was Rocco Di DeMeo, which this guy, I don't think that sounds like an Italian name. This guy's obviously not Italian, but maybe Rocco Di DeMeo got it from this guy, although I don't think Tony would fit in a jacket that this dude's wearing. But I'm talking about this brown leather jacket, which, like I said, I don't think it's meant to be the exact jacket that Tony gets from Richie Aprile in the show, and then later gives to what was it? It was like his maid's husband or something, and that ends up pissing off Richie Aprile and kind of makes him want to kill Tony at one point. But this definitely looks like that jacket from The Sopranos, so it very well could be, or at least just a reference to it. Also, shout outs to Sandy Hook. Nice, not too far from where I live. Bars. This is an actual seafood restaurant place right near Sandy Hook. You come over this bridge right here, and then this leads all the way out to Sandy Hook. There's actually a really cool old military base where you can kind of go walk around in the bunkers and stuff in there, and they give free tours every day. Pretty cool. And then, oh yeah, this was also a cool reference that probably a lot of people didn't get. So Dicky Moltisanti, after killing his father, played by Ray Liotta in the movie, feeling guilty about it, ends up going to do multiple visits with his uncle Sal, who's also played by Ray Liotta, assuming it's his twin brother, and he brings him jazz albums. He initially requests Miles Davis, but he ends up keeping on bringing like other stuff that he didn't ask for and doesn't even want. He's pretty rude about it. But this one was a pretty cool reference. This album right here is called Little Joe Sure Can Sing. That's actually Joe Pesci, because before he was an actor, he actually was a singer, and even after he had stopped acting and during while he was acting, he had sung. He even had a band that he called like the Vincent LaGuardia Gambini and something or something. I can't remember the full name of it, but it was a reference to his character in My Cousin Vinny. So it was kind of, even though Joe Pesci has never been involved in the Sopranos world, it was kind of, I just thought it was kind of cool that a Joe Pesci album of all things, who's been known to play in a lot of gangster films, did show up in this. So that was kind of interesting. And also Joe Pesci had a lot of involvement with the mob back in the day and stuff like that, probably around this period of time, because he was heavily involved in getting Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons together. And he was very much involved with the mob way back in the day and stuff. So not like a full-on mobster, but he definitely had some involvement with them as far as like nightclubs and, you know, music acts and stuff like that are concerned. He probably had some shady deals going on the side. Oh yeah, and then this was one more reference. I think this is the last one I'll get to in this video, as we're coming up on almost 20 minutes here. This scene where Johnny Soprano shoots Olivia Soprano through her beehive hairdo. If you remember, I believe it was the first episode of the second part of the final season, where Tony and Carmela go up to the lake to visit with Bobby, Janice, and their daughter Nika. and they end up having a very drunken game of Monopoly, and Janice drunkenly tells a story that embarrasses Tony because he doesn't like the way it makes his family look, where, you know, they're in the car driving, and Olivia's just giving Johnny shit and talking and nonstop, and he pulls out his gun, and for a second, like, if you didn't know the story from the show when Janice tells it, you would think he was literally about to blow her brains out right on the spot, because without any warning, he pulls out a revolver, sticks it to her hair, and then blows a hole right through it. So that was kind of cool that they stuck that in there. So at the end of the day, I know that there's a lot of good references and stuff in this movie, but at the end of the day, I felt like it was really a below average gangster movie that didn't do enough with the Tony Soprano character, as I would have loved to seen that develop until it became a made character. And as far as 2 hours of something to watch, it's, especially if you're a hardcore Sopranos fan like me, yes, you should definitely watch it. It's worth watching. If you've never watched Sopranos, there's almost no reason for you to watch this movie. It wouldn't be hard to follow along with the story of the movie, but you would probably end up being even more disappointed with it than I was, because, like I said, it's a very below average gangster movie that's just chock full of references to stories that were told in the show or flashbacks from the show and things that were referenced, you know, kind of throughout the TV series. But at the end of the day, I did review this over on IMDb. I gave it a 5 out of 10, which I feel is fair. It's like a 5, maybe a 6. You know, and but I could honestly, I'd rather go back and watch pretty much any Sopranos episode than watch this movie again. I really don't feel like there's any reason for me to go back and watch it, and I've already watched it twice. I watched it yesterday morning by myself, don't tell my fiance, and then I watched it in the evening with her and my stepson. So we watched it, you know, I watched it twice already, and just to see if there was anything I missed and all of that, and yeah, they're just, like I said, it was just a little disappointing. I feel like they could have done a lot more with it, and if they had turned this into a miniseries, I felt like it would have been better, where they could have gotten all these references and this stuff kind of out of the way in the beginning, and then we could have kind of jumped ahead maybe a couple of years each episode, and see Tony sort of develop into the point where, at least until maybe he becomes a made guy, or the whole Feach Lamont card game robbery and how he kind of gets out of that. That could have been... that would have been, I feel like, that's really what I was expecting in the show. That was the plot that I thought would have been heavily involved in this, and we never get there at all. Tony's not even close to being at the age where he committed that crime. So in this movie, he mostly, even though I loved Michael Gandolfini's portrayal of Tony and the way he did his mannerisms, all that stuff, they make Tony out to seem like a complete and utter pussy. And maybe that's because it's narrated by Chris, who was killed by Tony, which is mentioned quite a few times. And he even mentions that when he moved to the suburbs at one point as a teenager, that by his calculations, that made Tony half a pussy or something, which was kind of funny, even though Michael Imperioli, as the narrator in this, playing Chris Moltisanti, he didn't really have any like emotion when he was like narrating. It was kind of odd. It sounded very much like he was just reading very matter-of-factly off a piece of paper without really putting any emotion into the narration at all, which I feel like could have sold it a lot more. You never really get to see him at all. He's just a narrator basically talking from the afterlife, because, well, Tony killed him by smothering him with his hand after he found out he got in the car accident because he was driving high with Tony. So I feel like, having gone through all this, you probably get a good idea that I know a little bit about The Sopranos. I've watched it a lot. And yeah, but I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Please let me know your thoughts, opinions down in the comments below, as always, on the Many Saints of Newark in this video. Sorry, it ran a little over 20 minutes. I had a lot of stuff to cover. There's some stuff I didn't even really get to that I had sort of laid out here in my timeline of talking points. But that's all I got for you. I'm going to go get out of here. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll catch you on Monday for another video.